Okay, welcome. So, the purpose of this video is to basically introduce you to the Parchment editor and teach you the basics of how to use it. So if you're here for that, you're in the right place. Um, Before we start, a couple things to note. Parchment is in beta. As you can see on the website here, we have a very clear beta indication. We are very much in beta right now. Um, so there will be bugs, there will be minor annoyances and stuff like that, but it is still ready to use, and we're working on fixing these bugs in the coming weeks and months. Um, that's the first thing to note. The second thing to note is Parchment works best in Google Chrome, but you can use any browser. But for the best performance, the least amount of bugs, you can use a Parchment in Google Chrome. Okay, so this is what the editor looks like. Um, as you can see, there's three sets of buttons here. There's one set on the left here, one in the middle, and one on the right. So let's go over what each of these buttons do. So on the left here, we basically have the normal text editor buttons: bold, italic, underline, strike through, and clear formatting. So these are just, they would work as you expect in a normal text editor. So I can, bold, I can underline or italic, I can do both, etc. The shortcuts work as well. So control or command, whether you're on Windows or Mac, for bold, command B for bold, control or command I and U for italic and underline. And then for strike through, it's Shift Control X or Shift Command X. Um, and then for clearing the formatting, it's Command or Control slash. So if I have like a crazy formatting here, like bold, underline, and strike through, and I press Command slash, it clears the formatting, which is just the same thing as pressing this button here. So that's the left side here. Again, works like a normal text editor, nothing special there. On the right here, we have a button for saving. Please save often because we do not autosave your documents as of now. So you'll be responsible for clicking this every so often, and the more often you save, the better it is. We have buttons for undoing and redoing, and we have this button which allows you to download your current document as a PDF. If I press the save button here, for example, it saves it, undo and redo work as you would expect. Okay. And then we get to the interesting part of this editor, which allows you to write LaTeX. So that's controlled by these three buttons here. So the most straightforward is L. This stands for LaTeX. We call it dynamic LaTeX. Basically, if I press this button, it inserts a new dynamic LaTeX block inside your text. And so the nice thing about dynamic LaTeX is instead of manually having to type everything out, it kind of provides this interface that makes it much faster and easier to type LaTeX. So for example, if I wanted to write a summation, I would write slash sum, just like normal LaTeX, but I can just press space. It automatically converts the notation, and without having, I can just kind of tab and move around the summation to type what I want. So I can do n equals 0, tab to infinity, tab, and then f of x, or n in this case, whatever my function is. In order to get out of this, I can press enter, or I can press the right arrow key. I can also go all the way over here and press the left arrow key to get out of it. You can click out of it. Works pretty intuitively. But yeah. So that's the first thing. That is the first way you can write LaTeX in this editor. And this is inline, so wherever I want, I can write these nice. I keep writing X, these nice summation notations. Okay. Then we have this VL button. So I'm going to enter a little bit here. This VL button also lets you write inline LaTeX. So both of these buttons are for writing inline LaTeX, i.e. LaTeX mixed with text. Um, But this basically lets you write code in the full standard LaTeX format. And then after you get out of the block, it'll convert it to rendered LaTeX. So here, for example, I press the vanilla LaTeX button. And if I type here, you can see that everything I type is in this sort of gray um, area here. And so that kind of indicates that I'm in this vanilla LaTeX environment. So if I wanted to write the same thing as above, I would have to write everything that you would write normally. So sum underscore bracket n equals 0 bracket caret for the top. And then I write infinity, so infty bracket, and then f of n. And so for these vanilla LaTeX blocks, I can again get out of them by pressing the right arrow. Um, Unlike LaTeX, dynamic LaTeX blocks, if I'm in the middle and I press enter, it's going to actually move, it's going to chop the block in half and move it to the next line. But if I press enter at the end of one of these blocks, it'll pop me out of it. I'm now in a normal text environment, and this has rendered. So the reason we have both dynamic LaTeX and vanilla LaTeX is sometimes some things are supported in vanilla LaTeX and they're not supported in dynamic LaTeX. So for example, black square, which you'll want to use for your proofs, if I write black square here in this dynamic LaTeX environment and I press enter, it's not really going to understand it and it's just going to delete it. But if I write black square in this environment, in the vanilla LaTeX environment, it renders the black square perfectly. So both of these buttons allow you to render LaTeX inline. But what if I want to render like a table or a matrix or something with like a begin statement in it? So that is where we have this LP button. LP stands for LaTeX paragraph. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, these two buttons also have shortcuts associated with them. It's Command L for dynamic LaTeX and Command K for vanilla LaTeX. And then for Windows, it's Control L and Control K. Okay, so what is this LP button? Well, let's click it and find out. So after clicking it, this gray box kind of appears, and so I can also type whatever I want in here. And once I get out of it, it'll render as LaTeX. So the thing is that everything here will be compiled and rendered as LaTeX. So it's a good thing for environments, for begin statements, for things that for LaTeX that basically requires multiple lines of contiguous LaTeX. So let's say I wanted to write two summations here. I could do that by saying sum of again n equals 0 to bracket infty fn. And then let's say I want to have a couple new lines. And again, since we're in a LaTeX environment, just pressing enter is not going to cut it here. I'm going to have to write my double slashes to get some new lines here. And now let's say I want to have another summation. So I could keep writing this, sum here. But the nice thing about this is the dynamic LaTeX button actually works beautifully in the LaTeX paragraphs as well. So if I press this, I get that same a little blue box that I got earlier, and I can write a summation in the same way. Uh, there we go. If I get out of this block, since we're in this LaTeX paragraph environment, it'll actually render the LaTeX itself here. And then if I click back on it, it'll get back into that environment. And finally, if I move out of this entire LaTeX paragraph, you can see that I have two summations. I think I actually messed up my lines. I think for these ones, it needs to be 3. There we go. Got some more spaces there. So yeah, let's say I wanted to write a table here, right? Let's make another LaTeX paragraph. Um, Now I could write my, begin array statement, but let's say I don't remember exactly how to do that. So if you go to the Parchment website, we do have this handy documentation page, which kind of summarizes everything I'm talking about right now. And we do have a bunch of LaTeX constructs, which should contain almost everything you'll need for your homeworks. So if I want to write a table, I can just copy the table section here, paste that, and this should render a nice table here. Uh, let's say that I make a mistake. I don't include this bracket here. What happens if I write some uncompilable, some LaTeX that doesn't compile? How will that work? Well, let's click out of this and see. Okay, so I'm seeing the text here, I'm seeing the code here, and it's red. So if I hover over this, you'll see I have a parse error, unexpected end of input in macro argument, expected a closing bracket at the end of input. And so with some little bit of investigation, I can figure out that, oh, I'm missing this bracket here, and now it should render perfectly fine. Okay, so now that we've covered the basics, this seems like a good point to save this document, which we should be all doing often. And now I want to cover some smaller details about the editor, some things that you might run into. So let's make a new dynamic LaTeX block here. So let's say you're writing like this summation. It's just my go-to. Um, Whoops. And then let's say that you want to write this integral sign as well, from 0 to 5 f of x dx, right? And then you want to undo this integral sign. So uh, if I try to press Command Z or Control Z, it's not really going to do anything. If you kind of press these buttons, the undo redo buttons, it might undo the whole thing, and it won't let you redo it. So there's some weirdness there. So the best way to basically write dynamic LaTeX is, let's say you're writing something, and then the way this works is the state of the editor doesn't really get saved when you're in a dynamic LaTeX block. But if I click out of this, now the state is saved. If I go back in and I type this integral from 0 to 5, oops, and I press out of it again, now that state is saved. So now if I press this back button or if I press Command Z, it'll go back to the previously saved state. If I go back one more time, it'll go to the previously saved state, and I can redo as well here. So uh, basically Command Z doesn't fully work when you're inside this, but when you're outside it, it should work fine. Just make sure to click out of it to save the state of the editor. So that's one thing you may run into. Another thing you may run into is these LaTeX paragraphs. They're only allowed to be on one page. So if I, let's say I copy this table a bunch of times, so since this is going over the page, it's going to get me some error and it's going to say make sure the paragraph is only on one page. And so if I kind of click out of this, because I have these new lines here, and I haven't added enough of them, the LaTeX will actually render on one page entirely. It still will, I guess. But let's say I push this down, I'll get the same error here. And so things get a little bit weirder if I have stuff after here. So if I just type a bunch of text, which gets pushed to the next page. Now, if I press enter a bunch of times here, it can lead to some weird issues. So you'll get this warning, just basically push this LaTeX paragraph until it's all the way down on only one page. I can basically delete to make sure it's only on one page, but it shouldn't be on two pages even when it's rendered or when it's in this unrendered state. So in this example, you can see it's leading to some weirdness here. I'm just going to click on the top here and kind of push it down. And now it's on one page. And if I click inside, this whole thing is on one page as well. And you should never have so much stuff in a LaTeX paragraph that you need multiple pages of it. You should be able to, if I really need all these tables, I can basically, let me just cut all this stuff. Whoops. Cut all this stuff, get out of this, make another LaTeX paragraph, paste that. And if I only wanted to, for example, I could just do it that way and so on and so forth. So yeah, two things to note there. The undoing and redoing is it has a specific way to do things in dynamic LaTeX. And the other thing is things can get weird when a LaTeX paragraph goes over one page. So just make sure you're avoiding that. And please save often because sometimes things can get really weird and you'll have to reload the page entirely to get out of that. So something to note. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to cover here is support. So as I mentioned before, Parchmynt is in beta, which means while it does not have any major bugs, it does have several bugs that are minor inconveniences to the user. So for example, one thing is, I have text here. If I highlight this text, this works as expected. But if I have text here, for example, it's highlighting the text, but there's a bunch of new lines in between this ASDF and this DAF, and it's not highlighting that. So that's an example of one bug that we have. Another example of a bug is if I press the down arrow, it works great, but if I get to the end of a page and I keep pressing the down arrow, it kind of just stays there. It doesn't move to the next page. Or the converse is true as well. If I'm here and I press up, oh, that time it worked. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, within a page, the up arrow should work fine. But outside a page, yeah. I'm sure that if I enter here a couple times, oh, I guess it worked. The point being that like some of these things are a little sticky, a little finicky, and we're working on them. But we're confident that they're not going to disrupt your experience too much. But outside of these two bugs, let's say you find a bug and it's bothering you, what you can do is you can go to the Parchmynt website. We also have this support tab here. And so you can email us and we will respond to all inquiries within 1 or 2 days. For the urgent ones, it might even be a little faster than that. But please follow these directions. Make sure to use your UW or a CSC net ID when you're emailing us. So from that email address, you can use the subject line support. If it's urgent, use the urgent subject line. If you want to file a bug report, use the bug subject line. And try to keep your bug descriptions as descriptive as possible. Even if you want to take a screen recording, that'd be really helpful so that we can see exactly what the problem is. But we will do our best to address all these bugs in an extremely timely fashion. But yeah, that is the Parchmynt editor. I think it'll really help streamline your LaTeX writing workflow. I think it'll allow you to complete your homework assignments much faster so you can have more time to yourself to watch TV or hang out with your friends. So thanks for listening. And if you end up using this editor, please let us know what you think about it and give us some feedback. So happy LaTeXing, happy parchmenting, and have a great day.